Hello and welcome back to Budget Conversation 2024. From the Office of the Leader of the Opposition, I'm Marvin Williams. Together with Elson Lowe, we'll be bringing you updates on Budget 2024. We'll be chatting now with Coretta McDonald, AA, is it? Member of Parliament. Coretta, welcome to this conversation on Budget 2024.
Well, thank you for having me here.
I know you must be a bit tired having to present and then endure a rather disingenuous presentation which followed yours. But thank you for sharing these moments with us. Coretta, going back to history a little bit, between 1970 and 1979, the government of Forbes Burnham constructed over 76 schools across this country without oil money, with only the traditional sectors, and still managed to put a sizable chunk of between 12 and 15% of the national budget into education. We have a government in office which made a commitment to placing some 20% of the national budget into the education sector. Have they succeeded in doing this? And do you anticipate that they will, anytime in the future, be able to sustain that kind of budget growth in the event they were able to achieve it in this budget?
Well, Marvin, let me say to you, since we started to talk about the 70s, I must remind our viewers that it was Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham who made education free from nursery to university in this country. It was the same Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham who printed exercise books and textbooks, which the PPP are now discovering. It was the same Lyndon Forbes Sampson Burnham who provided hot meals in schools. I don't know if you remember the Cerex that we used to have in school, hot Cerex, hot milk, and the biscuits. So this whole big sham and gloat with the PPP, where they're talking about they're providing hot meals, and if the children living in the hinterland are accustomed to having cassava bread and they wouldn't change it. I mean, it's a whole lot of crap. The PPP continue to gloat in quantity, and not quality. And we've seen this being manifested all across this country. Wrong information coming out in the exercise books, wrong information being printed in the textbooks. At the nursery level, we had a whole host of books costing this nation millions of dollars. And those books were placed in the schools, and just the same way they were placed in the schools, they had to be recalled because of the mis and inaccurate information that they presented in that. And coming out of that, it was just a group of cronies who were given that task, that contract, as a matter of fact, to do. Now we come to this budget, this year's budget, with the Education Ministry receiving $135.2 billion. You had a budget last year. There was a budget the year before. There were several supplementary budgets coming to this house. But the PPP still failed to do what they're trying to do in 2024. And you know why they're doing all that they're trying to do in 2024? Because they recognize that 2025 is just around the corner. You're talking here about all these benefits you're going to be giving to teachers. And let me say, the PPP and the PRIA in particular, they ain't got no shame. Most of the issues or the benefits that PRIA would have listed that they're going to be giving to teachers now are coming out of the proposal coming from the Guyana Teachers Union, our proposal that they played a blind eye to. We have been proposing these benefits for our members, and they did not pay any mind to our proposal. What they did is to steal from our proposal the askings that we have been making for our members. So it's nothing strange that the PPP is doing. They like to own projects that don't belong to them. And like you would have seen, all the secondary schools that we went out there and we had consultations for, and monies were already approved for these secondary schools. But because of elections and the change of government, we couldn't complete some of what we started, and we couldn't start and finish some of what were already in the pipeline. And the minister, David Patterson, who was Minister of Public Infrastructure, would tell you about the roads that we have there and the bridge, the new bridge that we're going to be building there. These were all plans that were in the pipeline coming from the APNU. So when the Minister of Education go out there, she likes to go out there and glamour and so on. It's a whole lot of bluff. Nothing of her own, absolutely nothing of her own. I also mentioned in my presentation about the politicizing of the Ministry of Education. What we have seen over the years, over the last 3 years, is a whole lot of political appointees being appointed at the Ministry of Education. Let's take, for example, the Chief Education Officer. The Chief Education Officer is a public servant. And in that line, when the vacancy exists, there is supposed to be a vacancy notice, and persons from across the spectrum can apply for it. Even persons who live outside of Guyana can apply for that position. Nothing like that was done. The CEO was appointed by whether it's the president or whoever on a contract. These public servants' positions are all permanent positions. The PPP have changed it into contractual agreements so that their cronies can enjoy big fat cat salaries. And that's what the PPP is all about. And in terms of being able to sustain what they have started, they will not be able to sustain it because there's no measurement, there's no plan in place. If we look at the $40,000 that they've started giving to our children, I mean, we have no difficulty, absolutely no difficulty with those monies being given to children. What we said should have happened from the start of it, because it was just a willy-nilly share out. We said there should have been a plan. And since it was during the COVID pandemic season, we said, look, rather than just giving the parents the monies, we should have invested in buying tablets that the children would have been needing then at that time because they were at home doing homeschooling. And many times the children were not being allowed to enter the classrooms or be in the classrooms online because mommy went out with her phone, daddy went out with his phone, big sister went out with her phone. And there were times when parents complained that, oh, the teacher's filling up my phones with too many information and they're crashing my phones. So we said at that time, giving the monies out then was a waste of time. It should have been invested in buying the gadgets that the children needed. Because we know people across this country, our population, the masses are starving. And you putting $40,000 in their hands at that time, the first thing that people would want to do is to buy food to put on their tables. So our children weren't benefiting from it. And that's why we made the statement that giving the monies at that time was a waste of time. Rather, we should have invested the money in gadgets. We've seen the PPP continue to give out these monies. Now, they went out there and they go to homes and saying that they're bringing children into schools. They're bringing back children who would have left schools. Now, if you were to ask the PPP now, how many of those children are still in schools, they can't answer you. But what we are still seeing is the wanton squandering of the people's money. And you know what? The big kickbacks are coming. Because look at what is happening. We have the PPP cronies. They're not part, many of them not part of the education sector, but they just pull their families and their friends and their cronies, and they have huge monies in their backpacks, in half a sacks, as we would call it. And that's what they're going out there to distribute. Now, they have not been able to say to us, what is the cost for transportation for these people who distributing the monies, the cost for transportation, meals, accommodation, and all these things. Now, we would want to think that a sensible government, rather than having your people travel from Georgetown to go to the hinterland to distribute the money, that you would liaise with your people in the hinterland and you put the system in place where they can go out there, distribute the monies. But you know what? Is cat don't like see the matty with bag, or thief man don't like see the matty with bag. That's the talk. And so we have the people from Georgetown going out into the hinterland to distribute these monies. So you have to pay travel costs, you have to pay meals, you have to pay accommodation, and of course they have to get a stipend for doing it. So it's double whammy we're having, while many more children could have benefited. But coming back to what I said in terms of the measurement and evaluation system and the follow-up system, many of those children, they can't account for them. But this year again, you will see, they will go out there, bring the children in again, and they're saying as long as your name is marked once or twice on the register, then you're entitled to it. And after that, they don't care whether you will remain in school or you don't remain in school. No follow-up action is done. Now, $40,000, while 40 plus 5 is a reasonable sum. But if we were to break that down, You look at a pair of sneakers for the child. You look at a proper haversack. That's $10,000. A proper school shoes or sneakers is $10,000. That's 20 you're talking about there. If you were to buy exercise books, that's another set of monies going there. They have not, there's no scope in place in terms of dealing with transportation to get these very children who you want to be in school. You don't have any scope to get them to school. Now, we had under the coalition, there was the buses, the David Granger buses. They've scrapped that. So we have returned now to the days of lawlessness where our children have to stand on the roadways to wait for minibuses. You have the doubling up in minibuses again. You have children lining on the parks all hours with their school clothing, all because the PPP doesn't have a proper system in place to deal with our children. More than that, we have seen an increase in fighting in our schools, out of schools, students and pupils assaulting teachers. Now, if there was a proper plan in place by the PPP government, then we wouldn't have this happening on a large scale. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have fights. We must have fights because we're having children from all means of life coming. But on the scale that it has risen to, where the teachers themselves, I can share this example with you. The new Campbellville Secondary, last term, there was one day when the entire school was under siege. You know why? There was a fight between some students from New Campbellville Secondary and another school. And the other school turned up with their gang. And they were parading in and around the school. You know what the teachers did? Locked themselves in the head teacher's office and in the staff room. And the guys were there parading with sticks, knives, cutlasses. They had to call the police. Now, can we safely say that education is on the move? We can't say that. We have to say that education is in crisis. Look at what is happening in the sector. We just had recently 2 head teachers being promoted to one school. 2 head teachers. And this doesn't have anything to do with any administrative mishap. It was a deed that was done. It was done on purpose. And it wasn't one school. There were 3 schools in region number 5 where we had these issues. So, all right, we can say 1 was a mistake, but 2 can't be a mistake. 3 can't be a mistake. So it is saying to us that the PPP don't understand what it's all about. Now, what they attempted to do there is to move, and let me say this. They attempted to move a teacher from a grade D school to a grade C school, giving that teacher an administrative appointment. And that cannot happen. The guidelines at the Teaching Service Commission clearly outline how teachers can be promoted to school, how teachers can be transferred to school. And then that caused the issue there. And then we had the other 2 issues. But I'm thankful to the Teaching Service Commission, who had a keen eye for that, and they picked that up very quickly. Even though they were the ones who issued the list of appointments, they picked that up very quickly. And now teachers are being placed in the Department of Education while 1 is holding a school, while they're waiting for schools to be vacant to send the head teachers to. We've had issues where now our teachers are complaining now that the duty-free process that the government is administering is about friends and families. It is not done fairly. The teachers are complaining. And, the ministry, they are seeking to pull from GTU some of the authority that the Guyana Teachers Union had, where we were the ones who prepared the list for teachers for the duty-free concession. And it was not done by the GTU alone. It was done with representative from the Ministry of Education. They were all part of it. GTU prepared a list and we signed on, and that list was sent to the Office of the President. Now the ministry is preparing the list. So we don't know for sure what exactly is happening there and who are the persons there. But there's so many atrocities in the education sector. The gravest of all is the deaths of our Amerindian boy and girls, our indigenous children. 20 innocent lives. 20 students and 19 students and a learner who had potential. They were left to die because of the incompetence of the PPP. And so when they come here with this $1 trillion budget, it's all about numbers, not anything else. And what we are asking and what Guyanese people are asking is, why are you giving us $1 trillion budget this year? Why this year? Why you couldn't do for us since you came into office, because you came and you met oil money? Why you couldn't do it for us? But you couldn't do it. You can't do it for the ordinary man and woman, but you can write off a $211 million deal and put a ordinary public servant there as a scapegoat to say, oh, he did that on his own. The minister is not aware of what happened. And so what you did, you suspended him and took away 15 days pay from his salary. Education is in crisis.
Absolutely. It's good that you're bringing up again what happened with the first cost oil audit here in Guyana, where it was concerned that the country would miss out on in excess of 100 million US that it really was supposed to be able to reclaim from offshore oil costs. That is something that we have to continue to highlight, because that is something that the government has said they're going to arbitration over, and we have to see whether they're actually going to do that or that's empty talk again. One of the things we just want to mention at this point as we continue to the conversation is that we have every expectation that the NCN and the other government agencies will carry the speeches, the remarks of our MPs in equal measure to the remarks of government MPs. That is something that we need to see happen. Now, just to close off the conversation, I would say one thing that you can give us your perspective on is when we look at it on the top line level, we've got far more being spent on roads and bridges. Tens of billions of dollars more being spent on roads and bridges than education. That to me is really a travesty. But what do you think that says about the government's priorities, and why is it that they're spending so much more on roads and bridges than education, which we know has great economic benefits as well?
But before we go there, let me touch back a little on education, where we have seen the construction of many, many secondary schools. We don't have a problem with secondary schools being built across this country where it is necessary. Yeah. But we, in comparison to the schools that are being built, we have several secondary schools that are in dire need for repairs. Yeah. The Mackenzie High School, where a teacher fell just 2 Mondays ago, broke both her arms, and nobody is looking to do anything about that. And the head teacher there has been writing several reports. The former head teacher wrote several reports. Nobody is doing anything there. We saw what happened at Amelia's Ward Primary, leaking roof. The flooring is rotten because of the leaking roof. We saw the same thing happening at Watuka Day Primary School, 3 schools in region number 10 alone. So this here is saying to us that the PPP have decided that they will punish one set of people while they will seek to flatter another set of people. We've also seen coming from the PPP where they've decided to deal the University of Guyana a blow. Because they cannot control what happens at the university, they feel that they must deny them of benefits. Now, you have a 60-year-old entity as compared to a 3-year-old Lister or Strings of University,
Goal. Yes.
Which comes under the Goal Project. But you are prepared to give $4.1 billion to the University of Guyana as against giving $4 billion to that entity. Now, we ought to be proud of what we have. And so rather than developing outside, let me put it that way, quote unquote, outside universities, develop what you have and make it a state-of-the-art university so that you can offer both online classes and you can offer classes where persons can come and sit in the actual classrooms. Do that, and then we'll be able to minimize what we're giving on the outside. But all these things when they happen, it's about the kickbacks. But when we talk about roads, constructing of roads as compared to education, I remember the same one Ejil, who's now heading the Ministry of Public Works. A couple of years ago, when he sat in the opposition benches, his remark was, The coalition building road, they're constructing roads, they're building roads, and they're building roads. People can't eat roads. Well, I guess that has changed now. So people could eat roads now. So they're building roads all over the place, whether the roads will be for 2 months or 3 months or 6 months. And we've seen people complaining across this country. A road just finished building, and look at the road. Just finished constructing this road and look at it. They're building these concrete strips all over the place, and 2 vehicles can't pass, 1 vehicle at a time. So the thing again is there is no plan, absolutely no plan.
No plan in budget 2024. Thank you very much, Coretta, for your time. We know that you have to get back to the assembly. The bells have gone off. Thank you very much for sharing these last moments with us. Elson, there was an aspect of the presentation from the Minister of Education that I found very interesting. There was a boast of an increased number of persons being trained at the Sierra Potter College of Education. And there was a comparison between those numbers and the numbers that preceded them in years gone by, without reference to the fact that there is a limited capacity for accommodating students in face-to-face learning environment at the college, whilst the advent of COVID resulted in online classes, which allowed for the expansion in the numbers and also allowed for persons joining these programs from home while they were not actively employed and so on. So I find it a bit disingenuous, really, to suggest that this was a massive accomplishment. It was circumstantially driven, and it flowed from an unfortunate period in time that allowed for that development. What are your views on this?
Well, while it is good generally to have more teachers in Guyana, one of the things that I think we must always take note of is that under the leadership of the current Minister of Education, before the coalition came to office in 2015, you saw that mathematics pass rates were in the 30-something%. You saw the coalition come in and you saw an in excess of 10% increase in the pass rate of math for more than 1 year. And you've now got that same Minister of Education in office, and you've seen the pass rate go right back to where it was. What that means is that the PUP, again, is emphasizing a strategy, an approach of more is better without looking at really comprehensively improving the results that we see from our students, and therefore the skills that those students are able to bring to the workforce. It is, to me, tragic to see the government spend far more money and produce the same results that they had when they were last in office. That says to me that they are not really sure how at all the education ministry should be managed.
So more is better is a principle that for the People's Progressive Party spreads across the entire economy, spread across all the sectors. We are heading for some crisis situations in this country, in our economy. We thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for staying with us. We will be right back.